And similarly, ask yourself, who do you know who's happy? And I'm not just talking about the person who won the lottery today, but tomorrow finds out that they have 100 relatives they didn't know about who all want to borrow money. Okay, but who do you know who feels happy in a pretty consistent way? And then in terms of love, who do you know who feels loved? Put it this way, who do you know who feels that they have enough love? Let's just ask in this group, does anybody here feel like they have enough love? One person. Wow. 2, 3, 4. 4 people feel like that they're loved enough. Okay. The rest of us could use a little bit more love, couldn't we? Yeah. And why people are giving us more love, they could also give us some more appreciation. Yeah. How many of us feel like people appreciate us enough? 3 people. Let's flip it. How many people feel like you appreciate other people enough? I bet you never thought about that, did you? Did you ever ask yourself that question? Do I appreciate other people enough? Who's asked themselves that question before? Yeah. Okay, so maybe asking yourself, who or what do I take for granted? But we seldom think, do I appreciate other people enough? How many of you feel like you give enough love? Did you ever think about that one? Do we ever ask ourselves, do I love other people enough? Or if we ask ourselves, do I love other people enough? The answer is no, but first they need to love me. Yeah, they need to give me a big diamond ring. They need to do something for me, because I have all this love inside, and the reason I don't love them is because they don't love me. So they've got to love me first, right? And what do we mean by love? You know, is love the big diamond ring and walking hand in hand with some good-looking guy down Orchard Road? And what happens 60 years later when you're 80 and so is he? Is he so good-looking then? Yeah, what do we, do we only associate love with sex? And are love and sex even the same thing? Dogs have sex. Do they love each other? Okay, so what does love really mean? Okay. So these are questions that you need to think about. These aren't things that I can give you answers to. No, I can only give you some questions, give you some things that maybe stimulate you to think about these things and consider them. But I can't give you any answers. Because, you see, I think, part of having a successful life is going through and thinking about these things. And if somebody else thinks about them for you, then you don't have a successful life because you haven't thought about them yourself. Okay. So it's kind of like eating and sleeping. You have to do it yourself. Nobody else can do it for you. Although it would be nice, wouldn't it? I'm really exhausted. I don't have enough time to sleep. Could you sleep an extra few hours and then I'll feel rested? Yeah, that would be nice, wouldn't it? You didn't have to spend so much time sleeping. You could pay somebody else to sleep for you. But it's not like that, We have to do it ourselves. So similarly with asking ourselves these questions. Okay, let's talk a little bit about happiness. From a Buddhist viewpoint, we talk about two kinds of happiness. One kind is happiness that comes from sense pleasures, okay? From seeing nice things, hearing nice sounds, nice smells, nice tastes, nice tactile sensations, okay? Things that originally stem from sense pleasure or stem from our concepts about sense pleasure, okay? And then there's another kind of love or another kind of happiness that comes from internal transformation, from changing our mind. And it's along that line when somebody said that happiness was freedom from desire. Now, that's something the Buddha would really agree with. But for the people who are seeking the happiness from sense pleasure, happiness is not freedom from desire. Happiness means having a lot of desire and hoping you get it fulfilled. Because even you get what your desire is fulfilled, you're not necessarily free from desire, are you? Okay. Because we could desire to have a good meal. We have a good meal, but we still desire to have good meals. And in another few hours, we're going to be hungry. Or you desire to fall in love with, Prince Charming. He finally shows up on his white horse. You fall in love. But then, are you happy after that? Okay, because then it's not just a thing of fulfilling the desire to have Prince Charming, but it's what happens after you have him. Okay? When he doesn't take care of the kids and he doesn't take out the garbage and he stays out late and he drinks, then what? Okay? So that's why, we talk about these two kinds of love, the two kinds of happiness. One that comes by depending on external objects or external people, and another kind of happiness that comes through the internal transformation. Because the happiness that comes by depending on external things is always very unstable, because we can't control everything in the external world, can we? Yeah. The external world kind of does what it wants, and we might try and control it, but how often do we really succeed? Okay. So when we see happiness as something that comes from outside of us, from other people, other objects, other places, then we're putting ourselves in the position to be disillusioned and disappointed because we can't control all those external things. Okay? So the kind of desire that is the desire for external things or people to make us happy, it's kind of a setup for being unhappy and disappointed. I mean, of course, we might meet the things or people we want occasionally and feel very giddy about it and very happy, but then it usually doesn't last for a long time. And so that's why the Buddha really asked us to check up what we mean by happiness. And does happiness really come from external objects and people and places? And do we want to really spend our whole lives trying to get all those external things that we think are going to give us happiness? Is that how we want to spend our life energy? And the Buddha also proposed another kind of happiness, which is that happiness that's freedom from desire, or the happiness that is freedom from anger, or the happiness that's freedom from jealousy, or the happiness that's freedom from pride. Okay? Because if we think about it, think for a minute that you've eradicated the seed of anger within yourself so that you no longer get angry. That means whatever anybody says or does to you, and you never react in anger at all. Would that be nice? Wouldn't that be what you would call happiness? Yeah? If your mind were completely free even from the seed of anger. So somebody could come up and verbally tear you to shreds, and you feel okay. Wouldn't that be nice? Isn't that worth more than $1 million? Okay. So, arriving at the point where we feel this internal happiness is something that we have to go towards in a slow but concise and steady way. Yeah, it's not going to kind of arrive on our doorstep, because internal happiness depends on internal cultivation. And internal cultivation depends on learning what to practice and what to avoid, and then in putting effort into doing it. So again, it's something that we have to do. But this is really where the Buddha's teachings can be very handy, because they talk so much about how to let go of desire or how to counteract desire. And here, I mean the desire for external things, thinking that they'll make us happy. Because there is a positive form of desire, which is, for example, we desire to be free of anger. Or we desire to have an open heart that can love others unconditionally. Okay, that kind of desire is a good kind of desire. No need to eliminate that. But the kind of desire where we're expecting some external thing to make us happy is a setup for disappointment. Okay, but we're still very addicted to it. Now, we're really addicted to external things, thinking that they're going to make us happy. So it requires, really reflecting on our experience and trying to understand if these things actually make us happy or not, and how to let go of the craving for them if they don't make us happy. And we often turn to material objects or money, possessions for happiness. We often turn to other people for happiness, either because we want them to approve of us or to love us, or we want to have a good reputation among them. We often turn to our body for happiness. Yeah? We want our body to feel good or to look nice or to be strong. Okay, so these are all external things that are quite difficult to control. So how do we make our mind peaceful regarding these things? Well, one thing is on how to lessen the desire for these kinds of happiness is to think about impermanence, and to think that, everything's constantly changing. So today I might desire to have, a new computer, but the computer's changing, it's decaying, one day it's going to be old, I'm going to have to update it, it's going to get broken. Okay. So, maybe I don't need to crave the computer so badly, and I don't need to be so happy if I get the computer. Okay? So have a mind that's a little bit steadier. If I really need a computer for my work, then yes, you're working. Maybe I desire a new microphone. Okay. So, you know, if we need something for the work that we're doing, there's nothing wrong with wanting that. Okay? But the difficulty comes when we get attached to it and we start feeling, I need it, I want it, I need it, I want it. And then when we get it, oh, I'm so happy. Because it's those kinds of emotions that really set us up for difficulties. Whereas if our mind is a little bit less excitable, if our mind is a little bit more content, oh yeah, I could use the new computer, but the one I actually have now is good enough. Yeah, if I get a new one, fine. If I don't, that's also okay. The mind that thinks like that is much more satisfied and therefore happier and not so dependent on external things to be happy. Okay? And similarly with people, if we think about how relationships and people are impermanent and how our moods are impermanent, then we'll see that depending on other people to make us happy is also kind of a setup for disappointment. That doesn't mean that we don't have friends, doesn't mean we back away and we become cold and unemotional, but instead we have a little bit more emotional equanimity or equilibrium. So, and without being so attached to some people and having so much aversion to other people, then when our mind is more equal, we can be happy with whoever we happen to be with at that time. Whereas if our mind is unbalanced and we're just madly in love with somebody or very dependent on another person or so attached to a third one, then we're actually telling ourselves, I can't be happy unless I'm with that person. And how often can we be with that person? And even if you were with that person 25 hours a day, after a while you want a break, don't you? Yeah, if you were chained to the person you love, how long could you stand it? Okay? So seeing this, if we can lessen our attachment to others, and then in a way open our heart towards a wider variety of people, then again there's a deeper sense of connection and satisfaction, because we're not just dependent on 1, 2, or 3 people for all of our happiness. Okay? So when we think about impermanence and transience like this, it helps us reduce the attachment to things. When we, and reducing the attachment itself is happiness, is a state of happiness. Another thing that I do when I find that I'm quite attached to something or my mind is really craving someone or something is I run in my mind the whole video of getting it. Okay? I do the whole daydream. I've got this, or I'm with this person, and it's all like this. And then I ask myself, am I happy? And if you play out that video, and at the end ask yourself, am I happy? I don't know about you, but my answer is always no. Because nobody or nothing external can fill the sense of uncomfortableness or unease inside of our own hearts. And this, in fact, is where spiritual transformation is so important, because by transforming our mind, that's how we fill the hole in our hearts. It's by that mental transformation. Okay? So how do we go about transforming our mind? First, we have to listen to teachings from somebody who knows how to. Second, we have to think about those teachings and make sure we understand them properly. And third, we have to put them into practice on a regular basis. So that requires some effort on our mind, on our part, to really retrain ourselves. So it's this kind of thing. I mean, this is what life is about. You're sitting there and, some attachment pops up into your mind. Oh, I really want this. Oh, I really need this. And then you stop and think, well, am I going to be happy if I get it? No. Okay, then let's relax. If I don't get it, it's okay. Or the mind saying, oh, I need this. It isn't fair that I don't have this. Na, 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 na. And then you say, huh? Is it good, is it going to make me happy? Not completely happy, no. Actually, what I have is good enough. Yeah, I have enough of whatever it is. So even though others may not really give us what we think we deserve, still we have enough, don't we? So we can say, okay, I have enough, I'm content. And that feeling of, being able to transform our mind so that it feels content, that itself is internal happiness. It's not dependent on outside objects. And then I think also, the more we're able to develop ourselves spiritually inside, the happier we actually become. So, if we ask ourselves this question again, do I appreciate others enough? And if we realize that we haven't even asked ourselves that question before, then maybe we should start asking it and start checking up. And while we're checking up, if we appreciate others enough, now think of everything everybody has done for us. And do we really appreciate what people have done for us? Or are we usually keeping the accounts of what we've done for them, instead of what they've done for us? Because if we focus instead on what others have done for us, and then naturally arises a deep sense of gratitude or appreciation, then that feeling itself brings happiness and joy to the mind, doesn't it? When you appreciate other people, do you feel happy or miserable? You feel happy, don't you? Okay. So to appreciate others, it means we have to start looking and seeing how much others have done for us so that we can really appreciate it. So it means taking the attention off of ourselves and putting it on others. Because right now our attention is mostly on me. Here I am, the most wonderful thing in the world. The world should be so happy to have me here. Yeah, my family should be overjoyed that I am a member of it. My workplace should bow down to me. They are so fortunate having me as a colleague or an employee. We're so self-centered, aren't we? Now, how wonderful we are, how everybody should, they're just so lucky to have us around. Yeah. And that way of looking at life makes us miserable. But if we look at things instead, and look at our colleagues and how fortunate we are to have them, and look at our family, how fortunate we are to have them in our lives, and look at our teachers, how fortunate we are to have had teachers. To look at the people who work at the PUB, or work at the telephone company, or work on the roads, or collect the garbage, and say, how lucky I am to have those people in my lives. When we call a stranger, because lots of times when we're doing business we have to call strangers and, ask for help or, make travel arrangements or whatever, and to think how fortunate I am that this person is helping me. And if we train our mind to think like that, then we feel so rich in our own life, and we have such a sense of appreciation in our own hearts. And there's no sense of emotional poverty then, because we really are experiencing the kindness of others and realize how much kindness we've received. Okay? And to ask ourselves, are we kind enough to others? And I'm not talking about people pleasing. I'm not talking about doing what you think other people think you should do. Yeah, because pleasing people isn't necessarily being kind to them, because sometimes we please them because we want them to like us, not because we really care about them. Okay, so I'm not talking about people pleasing. I'm talking about actually being kind because we enjoy giving, because we enjoy being kind, because we appreciate other people in our lives. Okay? So being kind to strangers that we may meet on the street, or being kind to family members, because sometimes family members are the ones we're the meanest to. Yeah, we take them so much for granted that we feel we can just be as mean as we want to them and still they have to hang around and love us. That's not the right way to think, is it? Okay. But really asking ourselves, in terms of our parents have done so much for us. Have we ever thanked them? Huh? Or your husband or your wife, after you've been married 5 years or 10 years or 20 years. No? Do you really contemplate that person's kindness to you? Or do you just take them for granted? Or tune them out of your life and ignore them? Okay. So if we really start looking at what other people have done for us and have a sense of gratitude, that gets, we show that in our behavior. And then, of course, how other people respond to us is going to be completely different. Because if we show kindness, we show appreciation, that, other people are going to go, wow, this person's so warm, they're so friendly. And how they act towards us is totally different. But if we're always keeping the account books of what they owe us, because we've done so much for them, and of course they always owe us more, and they never pay up enough. If we always keep those kind of internal account books, we're always going to be pestering people, nagging them, having a sour face. And then, of course, that's going to influence how people react towards us. Okay? So even in terms of creating harmony externally, it all comes through the internal transformation and changing our mind. Okay? So I think I've talked long enough. What I'd like to do now is open it up to questions and answers. Or questions. I don't know that I can give you answers. Okay? But let you ask what you're thinking about and what you think is important. So if you want to write things down, you can. Or if you want to just raise your hand, you can do that too.
I have a question. Not particularly related to today's topic, but just wondering is that how do we jumpstart Buddhism in the sense to achieve the optimal effectiveness? It's like I have to be on. There are many things that I have to be on vegetarian, the 5 precepts, I have to do chants of many mantras, there's so many things I have to do, and there's so different schools of thoughts what they practice differently. So it's like, if I only have time for just one thing, or what is the jump start?
Okay, so she's asking, how do you jumpstart Buddhism, or how do you get instant Buddhism?
Yes, to achieve the optimal effect.
How do you achieve the optimal effect by giving the least amount of energy? The true capitalist, isn't it? Okay. First, I'm going to tell you Buddhism is not quick, cheap, and easy. Okay. Maybe it's cheap, but it's not quick and it's not easy. Actually, Buddhism is quite easy. It's our mind that makes it hard. Yeah, my teacher once said that. The Dharma is quite easy. It's just our obstinate, stubborn mind that makes it difficult. Okay, but how to begin a practice? I would say find a group where you can go and go to teachings regularly. I think it's important. There's many Buddhist centers and many good teachers here in Singapore. And if you find a group or a teacher that you really resonate with, then go and keep learning. Because the more you learn, the more stable your practice is going to be. Okay? So learning is one element to it. Doing a regular daily meditation practice is another element, because when you learn, you also have to think about what you've learned and practice it. And we can learn lots of things intellectually, but unless we do a daily meditation practice, it becomes very hard to integrate those things in our own hearts and minds and lives. So to do that, we have to keep time out for our quiet reflection time. Now, people always go, I don't have enough time, La. I'm so busy, La. How do I do it? But these people, the very same people who ask that question, always have time to eat. Yeah. They have plenty of time to work. In fact, they often work overtime. They never lack time to talk on the phone and gossip. Yeah, they never lack time for watching television. Okay? So what we have to do is look at what we spend our time on and see if what we're spending our time doing is actually leading us to the success, happiness, and love that we want, or are we really spinning our wheels doing things that aren't really achieving our purpose and making our life meaningful? Okay, and that's a very important thing to really consider. Yeah. And if we decide that our spiritual practice is something important, then we put it as a top priority and we make time for it. So one suggestion I have for people is in your appointment book, you write an appointment with the Buddha. Okay? 7 o'clock every morning, I have an appointment with the Buddha. You always keep your appointment with the Buddha, don't you? You don't stand the Buddha up. Yeah. And if you write it in your appointment book, then if somebody says, oh, I really need you to do this, that, the other thing, you say, I'm sorry, I have an appointment and I cannot break it. And it's the truth. And those other things can wait, and the other people can accommodate themselves. But your spiritual practice is really important. Because we not only nourish ourselves physically, like I said, we always have time to eat, but we always have to nourish ourselves spiritually. So whether we spend that time meditating, either chanting or visualizing, watching the breath, doing one of the checking meditations on the gradual path to enlightenment, okay? Or whether we spend that time silently reading a Dharma book, or whether we spend that time just contemplating our life and doing a little bit of self-evaluation, checking our actions, making determinations about how we want to be in the future. Yeah? But to make sure we have some quiet time alone every day where we can really think and get in touch with ourselves and become our own friends. And I think if you do that, you're going to be happier, and your family and colleagues are also going to be happier. And especially if you have children and you're complaining that your children never sit still and be quiet, try setting a good example for them. How often do your kids ever see you sitting still and being tranquil and peaceful? Ask yourself that. How often do your kids see you being really peaceful and content? Or are your kids always seeing you as the drill sergeant in the army who's in a hurry, saying, okay, time to get up, wash behind your ears, go brush your teeth, you're late again, come on, get in the car, we have to go to school. Did you do your homework? You didn't do your homework yet? No TV, turn off that computer. You know, all you do is give, really, like a drill sergeant to your kids. Okay? But how many times do your kids see you being happy and peaceful? And how often do you set an example for your kids of talking politely and of being considerate? Okay? So if you have that time each day to be, to do some spiritual work, where you don't feel rushed or pressured and you can be somewhat introspective, then, everybody around you is going to benefit, and yourself too. Okay, so that's another element of jump-starting Buddhism. Okay? And a third element that I think is very important is to have a very long-term perspective. If you're thinking that, if you're practicing the Dharma as kind of a fad, oh, I'm going to practice it now and see if it makes me feel better, you're not going to be able to sustain a practice over a long period of time. So that's why we say it's very important to have a long-term motivation of love and compassion and altruism, and a long-term motivation of really wanting to actualize our potential, our spiritual potential, purify our mind, develop our good qualities for the benefit of all beings, and to make a commitment to do that over the long haul, over a long time. So whether we're happy or whether we're miserable, we're still committed to improving ourselves and purifying our mind and developing our good qualities. Okay? And if you have that strong commitment and you're looking long term, you'll be able to sustain a spiritual practice long term. And that's when, of course, results start to come, is when you can do something long term. Okay? And also having that long term goal gives you the mental stability and mental courage to go through the ups and downs in life. Okay? Whereas if we're very emotional, something nice happens and we're going, yay! And the next day somebody, gives us a bad face and we go, oh. And the day after that somebody gives us $100 and we go, ooh. And the day after that somebody criticizes us and we go, boo. So instead of being like an emotional yo-yo going up and down dependent on external people and things, we start to think long-term. My long-term goal is this internal spiritual development, and I'm in it for the long term. Whether I'm happy in the short term or not, happiness is nice, but I'll be content with what I have, who I am, what I do, and I'm working on a really valuable spiritual path, and that, gives you courage and inspiration and joy in your life. Okay? Other questions? Yeah.
Good evening. Just want to. It's not exactly a question, just a thought that I just want to get your opinion on. You mentioned earlier about let me just have a look, about two external kinds of influence on happiness. And one is external factors and one is internal. I'd just like to comment on the external objects that you mentioned. Personally, I do think that external objects can bring short-term happiness, and I think that it is quite important for us to feel that short-term happiness. For example, I'm in sales and I close a deal, and that brings me that short-term happiness that I'm just like really excited. I've done a good job. I've placed a good person in a good job, and it gives me satisfaction. And for the rest of the week, I'm in a good mood. I'm friendly to everyone, smiling at everyone, and just being a good person. But if I don't close the deal, I'm not unhappy. I'll just say, well, you need something,
Mm-hmm.
So I just feel that in some cases, short-term happiness that is influenced by external objects
Mm-hmm.
is also quite important
Mm-hmm.
as a part of being a human being. And
Mm-hmm.
of course, you just mentioned the word just like a few minutes ago about long-term motivation,
Mm-hmm.
being happy.
Mm-hmm.
That goes, moving forward. Which is what I thought, because I'm not sure whether external objects are entirely a bad thing. I think it is quite important for every one of us to get that temporary happiness from time to time that are the direct result of your external objects.
Mm-hmm.
Just my thoughts.
Okay, so her thoughts are that it's very important to have some happiness that comes from external objects. Yeah. And I'm saying, yes, that's nice, but it's not going to bring you real, genuine happiness. Okay? So it's nice to get, but, on the day that you die, when you look back over your life, I don't think you're going to be happy about closing so many deals. Now, if we look at our life from the point of view of our own mortality, what are you going to feel happy about having done at the time you die? Okay? So that short-term happiness, it's true, if you close a deal, you get a little zip and it feels good, but it doesn't feel good for a long period of time. And as you age, you don't necessarily look back on that and derive a lot of pleasure out of it. Okay? In fact, sometimes people arrive at the time of death and they look back and they say, wow, all the things that gave me, these short-term bursts of happiness when I was young really weren't very important. And in the meantime, I didn't spend my time cultivating what was important. And sometimes, even in the process of getting the short-term happiness, we create many negative actions. For example, I'm not saying you do this, but some people, in order to close a deal, they lie. Then they feel, oh, so good, I closed the deal, but then later on, they don't feel very good about themselves for lying. Okay? So, it's fine, you can, have your opinion that it's important to have some of the short-term happiness. But I'm just saying, try and, look deeper at our own experience and reflect a little bit more and think about what really is important in your life, especially on the account of if getting the short-term happiness, you have to do things that are harmful to other people. How do you feel about yourself? Okay? Okay, then some questions here. I know I can't quit shopping right away. So what mindset should I have when I go shopping? Well, you're not shopping right now, are you? Are you happy now? Can you be happy without shopping? You're not shopping now. Unless I see you up around the books afterwards. Buying one of everything. Okay, we need to buy certain things and do a certain amount of shopping in our lives. But again, to not make it into a big deal. And when you go shopping, what I suggest is having a list of what you really need and only getting that. Yeah? And try and abandon the mind that says, oh, well, I'll get that and this and this and this and this. Okay? And instead, maybe think of donating some of your money to a charity and see if you can derive just as much pleasure by donating your money to somebody else who really needs it as the pleasure you derive from buying more stuff that you don't really need and can't use. Okay? So try and change your mind about, what gives you pleasure in terms of what you do with your money, and train your mind, to feel happy at being able to share. Because actually we have the fortune to be in such a wealthy country and to have so much wealth compared to the rest of the world because we were generous in previous lives. Yeah, wealth comes from generosity. Wealth doesn't come from stinginess. Okay, so if you remember that, and then you can, give money to various charities, either here or charities abroad. I mean, there's so much suffering in the world, so many people who can use help. And let your mind be happy when you can share some of your wealth with them. How to keep ourselves motivated in our spiritual practice. It comes kind of down to what I was replying to her question. If you can practice together with a group, that group energy will really sustain you and help you a lot. If you think about impermanence and what is meaningful in your life, then that gives you a lot of spiritual inspiration. If you contemplate the qualities of the enlightened one and think that we also have the Buddha potential and the possibility to, let's say, develop equanimity towards all beings, free of anger and attachment. We have the potential to develop love and compassion. We have the potential to keep very happy and joyful ethical discipline. We have the potential to realize the nature of reality. So contemplate your own potential and feel happy about that, and feel happy about the qualities of an enlightened one, and let that motivate you. Or if you're doing a regular spiritual practice, let's say, make some requests to the Buddha for inspiration, and for that inspiration that keeps us motivated and on track in our practice. And also, sometimes a little bit of self-discipline helps. Because if we can get ourselves to the cushion, or get ourselves to the Dharma center, or get ourselves to the retreat, then after we're there, we reap the benefits of it, and that brings happiness, and that's its own payoff. Here I need to take out my glasses. Is it possible? Is it possible to be obsessed with purifying our minds and seeking enlightenment and be unhappy when we do not achieve what we want? I guess so. But if we are like that, if we do feel like that, then we're really missing the point of a spiritual practice. Okay? Because a spiritual practice isn't, there's the goal, and I got to get this goal, and I got to get this goal, and I got to get enlightened, I've been practicing Buddhism for 3 months, and I'm not enlightened. And I only gave myself 2 months to do it, and it's already over the deadline. If we have that kind of attitude, boy, we're shooting ourselves in the foot. We're not going to get anywhere, okay? So we need a certain degree of, self-acceptance and also patience. And really learning to enjoy the process of spiritual practice. Enjoy the process of living instead of getting stuck on the goals that we seek. Other questions? How to keep your heart so open. Continuously reflect on the kindness of others. Yeah, train yourself. When you're sitting on the MRT, look around and think of all the kindness of all the other people around you. Yeah, when you're sitting on the bus, think of the kindness of the people that you see. When you walk into your office, turning on the computer, getting set up, think about the kindness of others. Before you enter your home, when you go home at night, pause at the door and think, I'm going home to the people who are really kind to me, who I care about. Okay, so continuously reflect on the kindness of others. Okay, so how do you be mindful at work, especially in business? I think one element is by developing mindfulness in your daily practice, because in that way you train yourself to slow down and to be aware of what you're thinking, feeling, saying, and doing. A second thing is to, in the morning before you go to work, cultivate a very strong motivation. Yeah, today as much as possible, I'm not going to harm others. Today as much as possible, I'm going to be of benefit to them. And today I'm really going to hold in my heart this long-term motivation of seeking to fulfill my potential and become an enlightened being for the benefit of all. And if you generate that motivation very strongly in the morning, each morning, every morning, okay, put it on a Post-it next to your bed, or put it on the mirror in the bathroom, or on your refrigerator, or on your steering wheel. You know, the more you just habituate yourself with that kind of motivation, then the more it's going to come naturally. And then another thing is to use things that happen frequently throughout your days as little triggers or little signals to help you come back to your motivation and to be mindful. Okay, so it might be the telephone ringing. It might be your child saying mommy or daddy. It might be the red lights as you're driving. It might be something on your computer, you know, that happens regularly throughout the day.
Om Nare Bhazanade